Okay, so I wanted to talk quickly about the idea of what a story is, because this is something I was confused on for a long time. I've talked about it in the episode on ideas, what constitutes an idea for a novel. But I wanted to dig deeper into character motivations because this is a really important part of this. Turns out what a story is when you have a main character, a protagonist who wants something and there are obstacles that stand in their way. That's all a story is. And and so when you have an idea, you might think, it would be funny if I had a protagonist who was a kindergartner who wanted more than anything to be an astronaut and was always pretending to be an astronaut, and kids made fun of him for always pretending to be an astronaut or whatever. And you might think there are some fun things I could do with that. That's not a story yet. What you need is a goal with obstacles. So perhaps you do have a kindergartner who says, "When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut." Um, that might be a hard thing to write a story on because growing up is so far away, right? There's not a lot the kid can do right now to become an astronaut. But maybe we posit that there is a competition that's happening that wins you a free space a trip into space, right? And so now our protagonist wants to go participate in that competition, and maybe that competition is at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, right? This is something NASA is doing, and it's happening next Thursday. And so our protagonist has to get to Kennedy Space Center by next Thursday. But we're not going to have our protagonist live in Orlando. We're going to have our protagonist in Montana or Canada or Nigeria, right? And so our Nigerian kindergartner has to get across the Atlantic Ocean to uh, Kennedy Space Center in Florida by next Thursday. Wow, now we've got a story, right? Because there's so many things this kid has to overcome. We could have ships sinking, we could have planes crashing, we could have cars running out of gas. Certainly, it's going to cost money. We have all these things that could be episodes in our story of the kid trying to get to Florida to this space competition, right? And then probably the story would also include that competition. So assuming the kid makes it to the competition on time, has to go through the competition. And then we have a few different kinds of stories we can have based on how the ending goes, right? The classic Hollywood happy ending would be the kid wins the competition, gets to go to space, right? So we could write that story. Or we could have the kid get to the competition on time but lose, right? And that's an interesting sort of story. It doesn't have to be depressing, right? Maybe the kid learns while crossing the ocean on a boat that he or she actually wants to be a sailor, right? Or a fisherman, and so I got here on Friday. The competition was on Thursday. I missed it, but you know what? The open sea is calling to me, and we have this ride off into the sunset sort of ending where now I want to be a fisherman. And that could be a satisfying story. We could also have the sort of story where the kid gets to the doesn't get to the competition on time. Then what? Right? Are there other opportunities there at Kennedy Space Center, or do they decide they want to be a fisherman? So that's kind of what the shape of our story is going to be like. We have a sense, here are episodes, right? We gotta get there. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong there. We get to the competition. There's all sorts of things that can happen there, and then we have our ending. So that's now the shape of our story, which is much better, right? We're starting to have something there. So this is all pretty well established. I learned most of this by amalgamating ideas from a bunch of authors I watched on masterclass.com. Something unique that I've come up with myself, I made a little illustration that maybe you won't be able to see. But I think when it comes to figuring out character desires, the thing that really motivates a character deep inside, I think there are really four categories of desire you can have. And what I've drawn here is a 2x2 grid. We have things you have and things you don't have, and things you like and things you don't like, right? So something you like and you have, that's something you want to keep, right? You're going to hold on tight to that. And if the story is about wanting to keep something, the obstacles are going to be other people are trying to take it away from you, right? If there's something you like that you don't have, that's something you want to get, right? And that's we're going to Florida. We're going to become an astronaut. I got to get this thing. If there's something you have that you don't like, you want to get rid of that. Maybe maybe it's whatever, an injury or a weakness or a vice or whatever you're trying to overcome. If there's something you don't like that you don't have, you're trying to avoid that thing. That's a horror movie, right? We got to run away from the monster. I don't want it to touch me. And I think a lot of times when you're trying to add obstacles to a story, the easiest sort of obstacle to add is an antagonist, right? I want to get this thing or keep this thing. There's an antagonist who has their own motivating desire that is in conflict with mine, right? We're both going for the same thing. We can't both have it. Or I want to keep something they want to take from me. That's simple. That works a lot. A lot of great stories work that way. For me, I think a truly great story doesn't require an antagonist, because what you're going to do is you're going to give the protagonist conflicting desires, right? So if we go back to our Nigerian kindergartner, yes, number one desire, be an astronaut, get to Florida, do this thing. But I mean, if I'm a kindergartner, I probably want to keep my relationship with my friends, my families. It's probably scary for me to leave my parents. Maybe they can't come with me, right? They've got jobs they've got to do. It's more expensive to send 3 people across the ocean than just one. So I'm on my own. And that maybe, which desire wins out? And as things happen, as the planes crash, as the boats sink, as the cars run out of gas, I'm always going to have this, maybe I should just go home, right? Maybe it's not worth it. And that's going to add a lot of color and a lot of conflict, internal conflict, to all the external conflict that's going on, right? And then let's raise the stakes even more. Let's say the winner of this competition doesn't just get to go to space. Maybe they get to go live on a space station. Maybe they get to go help establish the next Mars settlement. And so if I win this competition, if I get on that rocket, I'm never coming home. I'm never seeing my family. I'm never going back to Nigeria. Um, this is the end of all of that. And that really high stakes that, along the way is going to be, maybe I don't actually want to do this. And so I think the best possible story is our protagonist, against all the odds, gets to the competition on time and miraculously, despite many close calls, wins the competition and is walking up to the rocket and has this realization of, you know, this isn't what I actually want, and says thanks but no thanks. I'm going to go home. And that to me is a very emotionally powerful, moving story. And we could add a happy little coda where NASA says, you know what, we'll give you a ride on a rocket and land it in Nigeria to get you back home. And then our hero does that, gets to be in space, gets to feel weightlessness, gets to wear a little spacesuit, and lands in Nigeria. All that's behind him. He or she is I'm so happy to be back with my family. I will value my human relationships much more